This PechaKucha presentation is about the history of Native American boarding schools in the United States. It was done for EDFN 338, which is Educational Foundations class at the University of South Dakota. It was done by Haley Kern, Dakota Junkman, Skylar Frederick, Rachel Cranda, and Michaela Duch. Native American boarding schools were government-implemented schools that Indians were forced to attend. It was started during the 1870s, which was during the Indian War. Because it was during the war, many hostile tribes were targeted. This was because they wanted to break the spirit of these tribes and force them to give in to the white men that were trying to take their land. The first boarding school was founded by a man named Richard Pratt. He based the school on a program of an Indian prison that had been used in the earlier war. He is most notably known for his phrase, "Kill the Indian, save the man." Many of the schools used this as their motto to try to end the Indian culture and assimilate them into the white culture. About as many as 100 Native American boarding schools were operated by the government during its highest point. Although there were many schools and many students attending, most of the Indian children did not like attending these schools. More often than not, armed officers had to walk into certain tribes in order to forcibly take children to these schools.
Children were forced to leave their homes between 1880 and 1902 and enter into boarding schools. About 20,000 to 30,000 students were affected. Boarding schools included Salem, Oregon, Fort Bidwell, Oregon, now a community center, Carson, Nevada, now a historical site, Riverside, California, now a museum, Fort Shaw, Montana, Grand Junction, Colorado, Fort Lewis, Colorado, now a school, Fort Mohave, Arizona, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Phoenix, Arizona, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Rapid City, South Dakota is now a sanatorium for treatment of tuberculosis, Pierre, South Dakota, an off-reservation boarding school, Chamberlain, South Dakota, Flandreau, South Dakota, still a boarding school today, Lawrence, Kansas, Morris, Minnesota, Tomah, Wisconsin is now a hospital, Pipestone, Minnesota, Witchenberg, Wisconsin is now a church. Mount Pleasant, Michigan, Carlisle, Pennsylvania. The rest of these Native American boarding schools have been taken over by other Native Americans and are still in use today. Otherwise, they have been destroyed or are in ruins, and they are no longer in existence or any type of use.
The goal of these boarding schools was to assimilate the tribal youth to the mainstream American way of life. Along with academics, students were taught the importance of private property, material wealth, and monogamous nuclear families. The first priority in curriculum was teaching skills of reading, writing, and speaking the English language. Later on, arithmetic, science, history, and art were added to open discovery to the self-directing power of thoughts. Each day was divided into two halves. The first half was spent on English and academics, while the second half focused on industrial training. Girls were required to learn how to cook, clean, sew, and care for poultry. Boys learned skills like blacksmithing, shoemaking, and farming. These schools had to be primarily self-sufficient, so often it was the students who did most of the work and caretaking. Generally, boys farmed and raised the food, while the girls made the clothes, cooked and served meals, and washed the laundry for the entire school. The students were made to perform these tasks as it was thought students would then assimilate more quickly to the white members of society.
Schools were very poor. It was very dirty and cramped, and many students died of sicknesses that went around the school. They just couldn't get any better health because things were so dirty, and they just couldn't get the proper nutrition that they needed to heal themselves. They were forced to do quite a bit of hard labor and kept busy the entire day. Then they were allowed very minimal food to replenish their energy. They were never allowed seconds. Many students nearly starved to death. When they got sick, they were so unhealthy to start off with that it made it near impossible for them to heal. For a treat on the weekends, sometimes they were allowed to watch cowboy and Indian movies where the Indians were considered as the bad guys, and they had to watch their people get shot at. This was more of a punishment for them than it was a treat, even though it was considered to be a treat by the schools. And they were punished for many different things. However, the biggest thing was following their Native American religions. If one of the teachers or priests would find them doing any of their traditional dances or any of their rituals, they were punished very brutally. Usually they were punished by confinements or whippings. Some of the smaller crimes were usually met with beating with a stick or a belt and by giving them more chores. Some of the boys were forced to wear girls' clothes and march in the middle of the hall.
Haskell is an American Indian boarding school in Kansas that opened its doors to both Native American boys and girls in 1884. Boys were taught trades such as tailoring and wagon making and other trades. Girls studied household chores such as cooking and sewing. Haskell became an accredited high school in 1927 and in 1970 began offering post-high school classes and became Haskell Indian Junior College. Today, Haskell is named Haskell Indian Nations University. Students can now enter into associate or baccalaureate programs. Students are represented by their recognized tribes and integrate Native American culture into all its curriculum. Haskell has a rich history in athletics, and its football teams in the 1900s through the 1930s were considered legendary. Today, Haskell still takes pride by serving as the home of the American Indian Athletic Hall of Fame. This is our works cited. We got most of them from articles and websites.